Namaste and welcome to the Bharatvaarta Weekly. Thank you for choosing to skip the news and watch the weekly instead. It's a bright and sunny morning here in Bangalore and the ideal weather also, as Ashish has often experienced on his trips to Bangalore, right? So I have with me Ashish and Vatsa joining me to discuss the news and events from last week. Hi Ashish, hi Vatsa, how are you guys doing?
Hi, Carrie. All good.
Hi, Carrie. I just hope the Bangalore traffic was as kind as the Bangalore weather, but hopefully it will be in the next in
Well,
an
now I mean you have about 30% of the traffic, so it's kind
yeah.
of ideal. So, all right. So before we discuss the news and events of the week that was, we put out a couple of very interesting episodes last week, and I mean, these were again very interesting topics, but also, I mean, I loved the perspective that each of the guests brought to the podcast. So Ashish, what do you think about the Bangladesh Liberation War podcast with Aditya and Mohal?
I think the 1971 war episode was probably one of the most detailed episodes on Bharatvaarta. The amount of information which the two guests Adit and Mohal had was just amazing, and they covered the war from the perspective of politics, geopolitics, foreign policy, defense, strategy, and tactics. Practically nothing was left off. So, really enriching conversation, and I think it's one of those stories which actually all of us should know more about. Like we don't learn these kind of things in schools and colleges and so on, but the fact that we one of more comprehensively and one with several military strategies applied. It's quite a remarkable story to know.
Yeah, one of the shortest wars in history, actually, 13 days. So, Vatsa, what do you think about the epic 2-hour podcast we had on, the representation of Indian culture and tradition in mainstream arts?
So yeah, 2 hours, very long, but totally worth it. I think three things probably stood out for me. One was where Nivedita talked about this whole idea of auchitya, which is something you can't define, but I think that when you're crossing the line. I mean, down south we have this idea at an individual level of lakshana when it comes to behavior. So right? People, that people have stepped out of line, but you don't know what the boundaries are. So it was quite similar in that sense. Then Kaushal talking about adapting some of these Shakespearean plays and turning them into movies, but taking the legitimacy out of the characters. So it was kings in Shakespeare's play, but they are the equivalent of Bahubalis or gangsters in the movies. So when you bring that in, it becomes a bit arbitrary. It's not really a honest sort of representation. And I like the last bit where both of them sang, especially Kaushal's song, where he couldn't get a chance to sort of get a Marathi song aired. So he just came up with a song which was all about Marathi Abhiman, uh, which I thought was a great way to take something which was kind of negative and turn it into a positive. So yeah, these three things stood out for me.
All right, fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast as well. If not, do tune in. All right, we'll begin with our first piece of news for the week. Apple placed Wistron on probation after reports of violence at their plant. Over 52 crores of damage was reported after 150 workers went on a rampage. The violence was in response to an alleged delay of salary and overtime wage payment. The plant has over 8,000 contractual employees and 1,300 permanent staff. The factory hopes to restart in about 15 days. Meetings have taken place at the government level and at the union cabinet secretary level. What's up? Wistron is on probation. What do you think will happen from here on?
So there are a few things, right? So let me just start with the fact. So this happened last weekend, and as you mentioned, there was a delay in payment of salary, and workers were also allegedly paid less than what was promised. Mostly, what has come out initially is that these workers were hired through contractors, and contractors have caused the delay. So it's more of a problem with the contractors than the Wistron, than the company Wistron. Uh, they initially pegged the loss at a very high number. I think it was some 400 odd crores, and now it's down to 50 crores. Uh, See, Apple putting Wistron on probation doesn't really affect Apple as much, in the sense that at least this plant, that the one in Kolar, just manufactured iPhone 7, which is a pretty old version of the iPhone. But Apple figured out, and they have said that auditors have confirmed that there were some issues with the practices followed by Wistron, which is why they've put them uh, on probation. Uh, More than I think, just Apple. I think there are two, three things that stand out for me. One is the timing of this whole issue, where we have had some changes in labor laws, and they will soon be codified and passed. And at the same time, where a lot of businesses moving out of China and coming to India, especially with the PLI and so on. We'll probably talk about it later in the episode. Uh, so that's one thing. The timing is suspicious. The second thing is that between three companies, Wistron, Pegatron, and Foxtron, they are committed to invest 850 million in India. So these are all Taiwanese companies. So there is some concern that has also been raised by Taiwan in terms of the safety of the investments. They obviously would want to protect their investments and make sure that they also make money while they invest in India. In addition to that, tied to the first point, which is related to the timing, there is some unrest in Bidadi as well, where Toyota has a plant. Uh, so it does seem that there are some external forces at play here, and it's good that the central government has stepped in and asked the Karnataka government to look at it and close the matter quickly and make sure that adequate safety and security is provided to Wistron, and so that it sends out the right message to companies looking to invest in India.
All right. Moving on to the next piece of news. BJP swept the Goa Zilla Parishad elections and also made significant ground in Kerala. The BJP won 32 seats in Goa out of 48 constituencies. AAP won its first seat, clinching the Barnalan seat. Congress stumbled yet again, holding only 4 seats in Goa. Their alliance in Kerala, UDF, lost out to LDF in Gram Block and District Panchayats. These elections are widely considered to be a pointer to the local body in their respective states. Ashish, what do you make of these results? How are they significant?
Yeah, let me talk about the Kerala one first, and I'll come to Goa. See, Kerala result was actually not very exciting for the BJP, where of course it won more gram panchayats and seats in the various bodies, but the vote share has been under 15% for BJP mostly. And as per one of the analysis done by Manorama, which is a media group of Kerala, the vote share was 14.5% this time as well. So BJP just doesn't seem to be crossing that 15% mark in the state. So yes, there are tactical gains, and of course there'll be a few seats won. Plus, two municipal bodies were won by BJP this time, which is up from one last time. But and of course in Thiruvananthapuram again, BJP basically finished first or second on 67 of the 100 wards or divisions in the corporation. So there are some positive signs, but in general, I think it was actually not a very good show by the BJP, contrary to what the kind of discussion which has been happening in social media. The voting pattern in Kerala seems to have got divided along the demographic lines. So if you see the 5 districts in South and Central Kerala, like Palakkad, Thrissur, Alappuzha, and Kollam and Trivandrum or Thiruvananthapuram, that's where BJP is kind of gaining, and it's actually the way the votes are being split. In the national elections, Congress gains, and in the state elections, left kind of gains, and that's mainly because of the BJP intervention. But elsewhere in the state, BJP really has no game as such, and unless the alliances by the party work out, or if the substantial part of the left vote swings to the BJP, there isn't much hope of crossing let's say the 20% mark. So I think it's a long haul for the BJP. I think the state is like the final frontier for the party in that sense. So if Even in Tamil Nadu, at least there's some kind of a party alliance for BJP to. I mean, the party has a presence via alliances or via influencing the state politics. But in Kerala, BJP has zero play, and it will take a while for the party to really change that, if at all. Goa was quite interesting because Goa, I mean, if you look at the situation, CM Pramod Sawant has filled the very big shoes of Manohar Parrikar, whose death anniversary, by the way, was just a few days ago. And I mean, Parrikar was such a towering figure that it is very difficult for anyone to step in his place and then actually make an impact or even get compared with him, right? Because he was one of the finest technocrat politicians India has ever seen. So obviously, Sawant has been under pressure. There have been allegations that he has tried to break parties and do all the mathematics to save his government and so on. But the fact that BJP won these elections quite comprehensively is actually a good sign for the party in the state. BJP won both North Goa and South Goa. Traditionally, North Goa is the stronghold which has got the more Hindu voters, while South Goa has got more Christian voters. Where BJP actually lost. South Goa is one of the seats which BJP lost in the Lok Sabha elections also in 2019 to Congress. So one of the few seats that nationally Congress actually made a gain on last time. But this time in the Zilla Panchayat, the Zilla Parishad elections, the BJP carried 19 out of 25 seats in North and 14 out of 17 in South. Of course, in some seats it didn't contest and support some independents. So effectively about 37, 38 candidates which are aligned to the BJP who have won. So for Pramod Sawant, it is like a huge shot in the arm. For him, the elections are just about 15, 16 months away from here. And this result will actually make him very strong. And it seems like with AAP catching up as one of the poles of opposition, I mean, they got 6% vote in the last assembly elections. But this is the first time AAP has actually won something substantial outside of Delhi and Punjab, even if it's just one Zilla seat. But if AAP kind of replaces Congress as the main opposition, or at least one of the opposition polls in Goa, that would actually make the life easier for the BJP per se, given that some of the anti-incumbency votes will get divided. So mixed results for BJP, not so good in Kerala, but pretty strong in Goa. Also, there were two polls in Assam, Bodoland Council as well as Tiva Autonomous Council polls, which both BJP swept. So I think barring Kerala, the party seems to be getting its game together in all the poll-bound states for 2022 or 2021-22. But Kerala will remain one of the spots of worry.
Okay. I guess Rohit would agree with you on that. Moving on, RBI revised their GDP forecast for 2021 from a contraction of 9.5%, that is minus 9.5%, to minus 7.5%. This revision was prompted by a surge in demand in rural and urban areas. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das stated that he expected to see positive growth in the second half of the fiscal year. The RBI has projected 0.1% growth in Q3 of 2021 and 0.7% growth in Q4 of 2021. The regulator has also maintained the key lending rate unchanged at 4%. What's up? I'm reminded of that podcast we did when the September numbers came in. I think it was with Sri Thiruvadantai and Karan Basin, where we discussed some of these GDP numbers, right? And I think if I'm not mistaken, they had kind of alluded that these numbers might be revised. So is this an accurate representation of the economy post-COVID?
Yeah, Carrie, I think that was a really good episode. And the thing is, we had, a big chunk of our economy in shutdown for a good 3-4 months, which meant, any numbers that came in negatively, while they looked bad, once the economy started opening up, unless there was permanent damage in terms of capital stock erosion, it would really not be such a big issue. I don't think that this is the last revision that will happen. So the upward revision from minus 9.5 to 7.5, I think there are more revisions that are going to happen, not just for the coming year, but FY21, but also FY22. So I think we will probably be somewhere like 1 or 2% over FY20 and FY22, which is not necessarily good news in the sense that we would have lost out like a couple of years of growth due to the corona pandemic. There was this wonderful, interview with Neelkant Mishra of Credit Suisse on Bloomberg. I would actually recommend that people watch it, where he talked about some of these things in a lot of detail. And he's also not as pessimistic, as a lot of people are. And we've been saying this on Bharatvaarta for a while, that that quarter was a one-off, and we'll see a fairly quick recovery. So if you look at the way, so you have to look at companies, individuals, and governments, right? These are like the three sectors of the economy when it comes to consumption. Companies have cut costs, but what Neelkant mentioned was that as per their survey, only 7% of the fixed cost cuts were likely to be retained. So it meant that the loss is not that big, and it won't have a long term impact. The other thing was that when it comes to consumption, if you look at people in the lower and lower middle class strata of the economy, uh, most of their consumption is on basic items, and a big chunk of them got support from the government, whether it was in terms of food grains or direct benefit transfer. So they weren't that impacted, and as they start working, and some of these benefits go away, their consumption will also sort of bounce back. uh, so what we have seen is that I think the pandemic has not hit the bigger companies as much. They're probably better off in terms of their costs and everything than they were earlier. It's definitely hit the smaller companies and the lower segments of society. So the impact has been kind of uneven. Uh, the other thing is that government expenditure has also grown year on year. Capital expenditure is up when it comes to the economy. Similarly, tax receipts are up. We've seen 2 consecutive months of uh, GST collections of over 1 lakh crore. So overall, I do think that the economy is headed in the right direction, and we will see an upward revision in the coming quarters as well. Uh, Plus, another thing that he mentioned was the impact of PLI. Uh, the schemes that we talked about. Ashish spoke about it in a lot of detail in one of the weeklies. Uh, that itself is expected to add another close to 2% to the GDP over the next 5 to 7 years. So you're looking at maybe 0.3 0.4% addition year on year to the GDP due to PLI. So I think things are definitely looking up, and the numbers are quite accurate. And Nomura has also mentioned that India will be the fastest growing economy in Asia for FY21. They're talking about 9.9% growth. So overall, yeah, I would say it's overall, the news is very optimistic, and the outlook is very optimistic as well.
Right. Ashish, quick question to you. There has been some discussion on how much of this demand is pent-up demand, right? I mean, owing to a lockdown being imposed, and how much of this is like a sign of a potential revival. What do you think about that specifically?
So it seems like some of it was, of course, festive season demand in October, November. But largely speaking, the as Neelkant also explained in his interview, the fact that although the inequality has gone up, the fact that the highest or the top segments of the income distribution have actually retained their income for most part and actually not spent so much in the last 7 8 months. And they are coming in in a big way in the market now. So I think it doesn't look like that all of it was pent up demand, and some of it will continue in the next at least 1 quarter. So I think what happens in this quarter, I mean, we're already kind of towards the fag end of it now, just a few days to go in the December quarter. Numbers will come out on 28th Feb for this quarter. But I think if we are close to zero or potentially even positive, as some people are now forecasting, I think that should set the trend for the growth thereafter.
All right. Let's move on to the next piece of news. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the world's largest renewable energy park in Kutch. The park will utilize both solar and wind energy to produce 30,000 megawatts of electricity. This undertaking will be spread over 72,000 hectares of land and is located 6 kilometers from the India-Pakistan border. Along with the renewable energy park, he inaugurated a desalination plant and a fully automated milk processing and packaging plant. Uh, Ashish, this is in line with the government of India's plan to install about, I think, 175 gigawatts of green energy by 2022, right? So, pretty significant development.
Yes, I think this is one of the largest, or probably the largest park of its kind anywhere in the world. 30 gigawatts of renewable in one place is actually a huge capacity. We are of course lagging behind the 175 number, especially this year, because there has not been so much of new capacity addition. But nonetheless, this one project itself can make up for it in a big way. And although I mean this is expected to go live in multiple phases in the next 5 years and not the next 2 years. The park will have two zones in the total area of about 72,000 hectares. That's divided into two parts. So there's a 50,000 hectare hybrid park zone where there's a solar plus wind power units, and then there'll be like another 23,000. This will be before that. I mean, this will cover about 23,000 megawatt or 23 gigawatt capacity in one of those zones. And then there's a exclusive zone which is for wind power, which is the remaining 23,000 hectares. So the way it has been divided, I think it has also got some strategic importance because the park is just between 1 and 6 kilometers from the Pakistan boundary. So I think India is also using it as a moat. Basically, the land was anyway a wasteland, which was approved by BSF or Indian Army to be transferred to the government for this project. But basically, there'll be border patrols which will be easier to make because of the land now being used and occupied, right? So the amount of surveillance needed will reduce, and then BSF can focus on specific points of intrusion, etc. from the border. So I think the project also serves that strategic purpose where India can keep an eye on the border situation almost permanently because there'll be people around working on these projects. The main companies who are expected to invest, so there's Adani Green, there is NTPC, there's also the Gujarat Industries Power Company Limited, and of course the Gujarat State Electricity Corporation. The idea here is that a lot of the power will be bought by the Solar Energy Corporation of India or NTPC itself to supply to various for various state commitments which they have. And I think this is also quite interesting because Kutch otherwise, I mean, given the topography and given the fact that it is a very difficult place to live in terms of the general features of the area. This will also create jobs at least for the next 5 years while the construction is going on, and then there'll be some permanent jobs to run and maintain these installations. So all in all, a pretty interesting use of a part of India which really wasn't very productive, and it caters to multiple objectives, which is national security, border patrolling, and of course the growth of renewable energy. And I suspect that some of these projects, or some, can be even replicated in other parts also, especially in Rajasthan and perhaps in other border states as well.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions from YouTube, but I think that we can take that at the end. So Ola Electric will be constructing the world's largest scooter factory in Tamil Nadu. The state government stated that this factory could create over 2,000 jobs. Ola had acquired Netherlands-based electric vehicle company eTurgo earlier this year with plans of launching an electric vehicle in 2021. The company has signed an MOU with the TN government with the investment for the factory pegged at 2,354 crores. This pact was one of the 18 MOUs signed by the government, the largest of which was Torrent Gas, which put up an investment of about 5,000 crores. What's our very positive signs on the manufacturing front for India?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Ola has been probably planning this for a while. Ola Electric, raised 250 million last year, so it became a unicorn sometime last year. Then they hired a veteran from General Motors to head the manufacturing and operations for Ola Electric at the end of November. So they clearly were planning, to build scale in this area, and this was always on the cards. Uh, so they've set up the plan. The plan is to invest $327 million and set up this scooter factory in Tamil Nadu. Uh, it's great in terms of job. It's expected to create about 10,000 jobs. Uh, for me, what's interesting is that all of Etergo's scooters. So there are, if you look at the electric scooter market in terms of players in India, you have Ather, which is big, and Ola Electric, which will probably become big, after the acquisition of Etergo, and they'll start manufacturing scooters in India. These scooters have removable batteries; they're swappable, whereas Ather has fixed batteries. So I think at some point in an earlier episode we also spoke about charging points on highways, and I think we will also see charging points set up within cities, and this whole business of batteries being swapped, because batteries form a big chunk of the cost of any electrical mobility device. So multiple people will be able to use the same battery, so you don't need people to buy multiple battery sets if they have more than one vehicle at a house. And this could also create a market where people could just go to a station and get like a charge battery, use it, and once it's discharged, hand it over somewhere else. So there is that potential market that will get created as well. So I think they're looking at it long term, because at some point in the future, even the government will step in and want batteries to be removable, rather
Right.
than being sort of fixed onto vehicles.
Yeah. Ashish, quick comments from you.
Yeah, let me talk about a torrent gas investment. So, see, city gas distribution is an area, Carry, which has not really been talked about enough in the media. It's actually a very exciting area because India is trying to move away, or at least depend on gas for part of its energy requirements. And given that gas supply is slightly more predictable than the crude supply, I mean, in terms of the geopolitics of which India faces, this shift is good in general. And this whole Urja Ganga project, which PM Modi had launched multiple years ago, I think that is now, some of those parts are now kind of getting implemented. So Torrent Gas is a Ahmedabad-based company. It actually may go public in the next 3-4 years, but it's trying to create a city gas distribution network in Chennai and a couple of nearby districts. So a pretty interesting area, something to track actually for future, because many more such projects will be taken up in different states.
All right, moving on to the last bit of news for the week. Prime Minister Modi interacted with space industries and startups. The Prime Minister spoke about strengthening the professional talent pool to empower space operations. He addressed an interaction meeting with 8 space industry participants and ISRO. Some suggestions made by industry participants were to prioritize the construction of the new launch pad at Tuticorin and setting up a space fund for startups. Ashish, this seems to be a positive sign to explore a new frontier, right?
Yes, the participation of private players in space exploration was cleared as one of the reform as part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat package by the government in May and June. And this was one of the announcements made at that point of time. Since then, the government has set up the Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center in space, which the government will use to promote startup participation. And ISRO will be helping them in terms of their requirements for providing infrastructure and so on. The proposals which have already been made by private players are in a wide range of areas, like satellite launches, small satellite vehicle launches, ground stations, creating satellite constellations, geospatial services, and propulsion systems, and so on. So there's already enough interests in this area, and the fact that the PM directly interacted with some 8 companies also shows that the government is serious about it. The companies had a couple of like big players like Bharti and L&T, which are the names which we see most often in areas related to defense, security, and telecommunication types things. But there were also a lot of small companies like Agnikul, Cosmos. There was Skyroot Aerospace, Alpha Design, Map My India. So Pixel India, some of these are pretty interesting companies. Also Space Kids India, which is doing some work for making space more accessible or more known to the kids actually. So a lot of these companies were also represented, and which also shows that the government is serious about promoting their businesses, and I mean the concepts of their business, not the business itself, but the fact to that the government will lend a helping hand there. So good gesture by the PM, and hopefully India will also develop a military industrial complex through the space exploration route, like the other countries have done, notably the US.
All right, so that's it for this weekly. Thank you so much for choosing to skip the news and watch the weekly. We have plenty of interesting content coming up. Vatsa, you want to talk very quickly about the power sector episode?
Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion, and we covered a lot of breadth and depth, especially in terms of, one of the questions that people have is why do distribution companies continue to lose money in India, and what's happening on the renewable front, what's happening on the solar front. We tackled all of this, and both Mudit and Rajat, who spoke to, Rajat runs a company that specializes in renewable energy, and Mudit has a research background. So it was there was a lot of depth and content in the discussion, and I am definitely looking forward to it. I'm sure a lot of other people will find the episode very interesting.
Right. So we have a couple of questions as well. There's a question to Ashish. What do you think will be the impact of labor laws? I think we've covered this in depth on multiple episodes of Bharatvaarta. We will probably link that in the podcast description. So yeah, you could check that out. All right, guys, this was fun. Thank you so much again, and hope to catch you next week as well. Until then, take care, stay safe, stay very safe, and see you soon.